Hi, today is Tuesday, the 28th of February, and on Saturday I went on a march, a peace march. We were campaigning for peace in Ukraine, and there were about 3,000 people there, and not a huge amount. We gathered outside the BBC and walked to Trafalgar Square, where there were some speakers and a bit of a rally. And it was a very broad coalition, I would say. And there were people there who uh, were carrying CND placards. You know, they were particularly concerned with nuclear war, rightly so. There were some socialists there. There were socialist workers there. There were people who were saying welfare, not weapons. There were a few religious people there as well. There was at least a couple of Buddhist monks, or a monk and a nun actually, and there was also a guy carrying a placard saying that the whole situation had been predicted by Daniel back in the Bronze Age, I suppose. But I looked into it, and in actual fact, Daniel did predict something similar, analogous, I guess. But I think he was talking about Nebuchadnezzar rather than the president of the United States. Anyway, he meant well. There were also separated from us by the road uh, a small number of people who I suppose were mounting a counter demonstration. There were about 30 or 40 of them, making a lot of noise, all waving Ukrainian flags as if the people who were appealing for peace didn't care about Ukraine. Very much do, but uh, anyway, they were shouting and hollering. They were not very nice, actually, but there wasn't any real conflict between them. Most of the people who were marching for peace, demonstrating for peace, were older people and peaceful people, and they weren't shouting. They weren't raising their voices. They were just there to march and listen to the speeches. Anyway, when it came time for the march to move off, really sometime after it was due to go, but eventually, when the time came, the counter demonstration, the Ukrainians, flag waving, shouty people that they were ushered to the front of the march. And the press photographers turned out in their numbers to photograph them and document them, and they made it look like they were at the head of the demonstration, and that somehow the demonstration was possibly even in support of Ukrainian victory. Well, that really wasn't the point. But anyway, they were there, and there wasn't anybody there to push them out of the way. I mean, we were peaceable people. So they marched off towards Trafalgar Square, and in Trafalgar Square there was quite a few more people holding hostile back placards, and I think there was quite a bit of flag waving. I don't really know what the flags were in aid of, but flags are never really a good sign, are they? Anyway, I left then and went and got a coffee. While we were walking down to Trafalgar Square, there was somebody who kept walking up and down the line saying, Well, Putin's useful idiots. Putin's useful idiots. No, I guess he was meant to be insulting us in some way, and I don't really think he understood fully what he was saying, but Putin's useful idiots. Perhaps that's what we were. Anyway, eh, it was an interesting experience. But it did set me off on a train of thought, and I mean, I wondered, for example, what the war was about. I mean, it's touted by the popular press and by people in support of it, although I don't see how you can really be in support of a war. But as a defense of democracy against autocracy, they're defending democracy. And I thought about it. I don't really think that we have democracy. I don't think. Well, I certainly don't think they have democracy in America. I mean, when was the last time we actually elected somebody who was popular, or even elected somebody who had most of the votes? It doesn't happen very often, and it set me thinking: what is it? If it isn't a democracy, is it a plutocracy, or is it an autocracy, or is it an oligarchy? And well, I wasn't sure, so I looked into it. Really, it was the difference between an oligarchy and a plutocracy. And it turns out there isn't much difference, really. An oligarchy is the rule of an elite minority who might be aristocrats or significant academic people or church heads of, religious heads, people like that. Whereas plutocracy is the rule by the rich minority of rich people. And, well, that doesn't exclude them from being oligarchs as well, because you can be a plutocrat and an oligarch. But when did you last see a poor oligarch? And it doesn't happen very often. So they amount to the same thing. And when you have the rich people, or the oligarchs, controlling all of the services and industry in the country, and all of the media outlets, and they're able to pay off the politicians, which they do, and reward the politicians for service by giving them non-executive directorships when they retire, that sort of thing. I mean, they go straight from being defense minister to being head of some defense manufacturer. Some I mean, even the more honest of the politicians that end up being a non-executive director of some sort of tobacco company or something. So I don't really know that we live in a democracy. I mean, we have a vote every now and again, but even that is being whittled away. I mean, I got a letter this morning from the local authority saying that in future, when I vote, I would have to have ID. I'd have to have visual ID, i.e., something with my photograph on it, like a passport or a driving license, or possibly a freedom pass if you're old enough. And well, then that excludes some people. That makes it difficult, particularly for a certain class of people, younger people, poorer people. And that, well, that's just the thin end of the wedge, actually, because there will be moves to make it even more difficult. I mean, the government at the moment is planning boundary changes and other kinds of gerrymandering, which make it more and more difficult for an opposing party to get elected, as if it wasn't difficult enough. Anyway, I despair. So, anyway, that's what I've been doing. I haven't been gardening much. There isn't much gardening to do, but I will come back to that. Until I do, I'll see you later.